Hey guys, so welcome back to the BMW Blog podcast. This is season 2, episode 10. I am once again joined by Nate, and today we have a very exciting topic: that all new BMW M5 Sedan and BMW M5 Touring. But we're going to focus on something specific, Nate, today, and what's that?
Yep, that's what everyone's talking about right now is how much it weighs.
Because that's the main topic, right? So it feels like people moved past the design, which we kind of expected based on the new 5 Series. We kind of knew what we're going to get, especially when we saw the i5 M60. But the number one topic with the new M5, it's definitely the weight right now. So maybe we start there. We talk a little bit about the history of the BMW M5, where we started with the E28 and how that weight progressed, and then we're going to talk about how we ended up here, and then of course we're going to talk about competitors, and more specifically the 911 hybrid, even though it's not a direct competitor, but really it's one of the new cars they use in a hybrid system, and we're going to talk about the different approach that these two companies took basically. All right, so let's start with the E28. So if we go back in time, and we even put a chart up just to kind of see the progression of the weight. We're going to put that on the screen if you're watching this on YouTube. If not, we're going to just walk you through the weight. So E28 came out in 1985, and the curb weight of that car at the time was about 3,153 pounds, so 3,153 pounds, which translates into about 1,430 kilograms. The car made 286 horsepower. Now, it depends if you're looking at PS or HP, but it's around that mark. And then, to talk about the new M5, right? We put that in context today. The new M5 G90 by US curb weight, it's 5,390, which is about 2,445 kilograms, and the car makes 717 horsepower. So that's nearly, if my math is correct, I guess over 3,000 pounds compared to the first one, or actually about 2,000 pounds compared to the first one. So how do you get here, Nate? What do you think happened?
Size, man. I've driven one of those E28s, and it's like a modern 2 Series size. It's just a much smaller, lighter car. And it's balanced out with that less horsepower. So as cars gotten bigger, safer, more capable, they get bigger. I think the new 5 Series is just as big as an older 7. So size just happens with all the safety standards, bigger engines, more power, more drivetrain, just more.
Yeah, I think that's worth talking about, because I know a lot of these changes are also driven by the new plug-in hybrid system. Clearly, that battery pack is quite heavy, but we have to acknowledge it. Over time, consumers have changed. The amount of standard features in a car have significantly increased. We're demanding a lot more from our cars when it comes to luxury, comfort, and especially to safety. And some of these weight changes are really, really driven by the regulators and by the customers too. So it's not just like BMW is the only brand that's moving up in weight. You can see this across all the brands. But of course, when it's something like the new M5, then people get really vocal about it. So we're not here today to find any excuses when it comes to that. This is why we're going to talk towards the end about the difference in the hybrid system that the M5 took versus the Porsche hybrid system. But we just kind of want to walk you through really where we started, where we are today. And then we kind of look at every generation, because every new generation M5 that came out, it was larger. Of course, he had more features, bigger engines as well. And that's one thing that drove the weight of those cars.
Yeah, and one thing we can always know about the BMW M brand is, they very much focus on performance, right? And that's the whole goal of that line. And I've never seen them seem to produce something that doesn't perform up to what they want, right? So they knew there's going to be a weight compromise here. They balance that out with power, and well, you've driven it, I haven't yet, so I'm guessing that all comes together in a really nice package.
Yeah, so we'll talk about the driving experience a little bit, because it was only on track. But before we do that, let's kind of look at some of the comparable numbers with other competitors, because I just looked up an article on Motor One. I know they did this comparison early on, where it basically showed that the new M5 weighs as much as a Chevy, as a Chevy Tahoe, two-wheel drive, and as much as an F-150 Ford, just as much as a Lucid Air Sapphire, which is an all EV. Maybach S-Class, and a Range Rover Sport. So that kind of puts the weight in context. I think out of these cars, really, I don't think any one of them it's a hybrid. I think just the Lucid Air, it's the one that's all EV, so that makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah, and all the others are, yeah, they're ICE engines. They're not carrying a big old battery pack around. So therefore, they're not having the benefit of that hybrid technology.
Yeah. So since we talk generations, let's look at the E34, right? So we put up this chart where basically we saw an increase of 738 pounds. And I know the Motor One guys, for example, someone pointed this out, they only saw an increase of about 343 pounds between E28 and E34. And honestly, when I look this up, there are the different weights being thrown out there. So it depends on which one you go. But let's just say, let's take a medium or an average of this, and let's say plus 500 pounds basically difference. And you can see once again, because the size of the two cars have changed quite a bit. And that was a huge jump from the E28 to the E34. Yet the E34 today, everybody raves about that car. Everybody loves that car. But I do wonder if back in the day, if anyone really complained about the weight of that car.
No, I don't really remember anyone complain about weight of that car because you're right. The size was much bigger. It was much more luxurious car, much more comfortable. And that little, I think it also has a longer wheelbase too. So, I mean, it's just, it was more comfortable to drive around in, and felt more like a luxury sedan.
Yep, exactly. So if you look at the weight of that car, so the M5 E34, it was about 3,600 pounds, 1,650 kilograms, so 1,650 kilograms. And the power output went from 286 in the E28 to 340. So once again, power to weight ratio is quite good in that car. But then again, it was still a quite heavy car probably for those times.
Yeah, I mean, it was a luxury car, right? So I mean, you still had all the different motors in the seats and things like that. So there's, it had a lot of technology in there that made it a little bit heavier. And that's what the 5 Series is about though, right? You want it to still be luxurious on your day-to-day driving. So I mean, it has all those creature comforts.
Exactly. And now if you look at the next one, so let's look at the E39 M5. So they actually managed to keep the weight in check. According to our numbers here, it only went up about 45 kilograms, which is really about 100 pounds, basically, based on what I see here. So that's quite impressive because the power also went up by 60 horsepower to 400 horsepower. So there is a reason why people love the E39.
Yeah, the E39 is fantastic. You got that additional power bump. As you mentioned, the car's not that much heavier. It's same basic size as well, I believe, as the E34. So you just got a little bit more power throughout the whole vehicle, which is fantastic for an M brand, obviously, and just drove great.
Yep, exactly. And then once again, they managed to keep the weight in check when it comes to the next generation, and that was the E60 M5, and that one weighed 1,755 kilos, or about 3,869 pounds. So that was really, once again, about 100 pounds increase, about 60 kilograms over the previous generation. But the power bump was quite impressive because of the V10. So it went up from 400 horsepower to 507 HP. And I honestly just drove a 6-speed manual M5 E60 the other week in Monterey. And once you get that engine up to like 8,000 RPM, oh my God, that car is just so much fun to drive. It just pulls so hard, and it just feels really lightweight, honestly.
It sounds fantastic. It pulls great. And that's where that weight came from. It's my guess is, that's probably a heavier engine in there. So, I mean, that makes up for that 100 some pounds. I don't think the car got much bigger, maybe a little bit bulkier and brawnier, but like, I think that's where most of that weight would come from. But that as a package as a whole, I mean, that's just a unique M5 that I think will always kind of stand out just because that engine.
Yeah, what's interesting about the M5 E6 is also the fact that really was a bigger car than before as well. It also came with a lot of new technology, the iDrive system in there, and the new screens in the car. So it was a lot more digital. Yet they did manage to kind of keep the weight down, which was fantastic, while still fitting, the glorious V10 in there. I mean, that was the first time they used the V10 in an M5. So I do wonder if that weight check was was well balanced just because of the chassis, or maybe there were just not that many regulations back then?
Yeah, that's my guess is more about the safety regulations. I think the next generation is when you really start seeing a lot more advancement in like driver assistance and packages and things like that, which just adds a bunch more stuff. So I think, as we moved on to the F10, yeah, we lost that V10, but I think there's a whole bunch of, I don't know for certain, but I believe that's where a lot of those driver assistance, a lot of safety features were upgraded to.
Yeah, exactly. And on our chart, we also pointed out the fact that a huge bump in weight started to come along with the F10 generation, right? The twin turbo 4.4 liter, and essentially, according to our numbers right here, it went up from, so the E60 M5, we said 1700 kilograms, 1755, and then this one went up to 1870, so about 115 kilograms went up. So that was a little bit more significant than before. I guess in pounds, if you care about that number, it's about almost 200, and I have the numbers right here, almost 300 pounds, actually 297. So that was a big jump compared to the previous models. And then once again, the F10, when it came out, definitely was the bigger car. You could see that it was advanced. It had a lot of driving assistant features, and then of course it had the new V8 in there, and the automatic transmission as well, which I'm assuming when we weigh this, we're looking at the automatic transmission.
Yeah, and that's a good point. It's like the transmission drivetrains, obviously got more advanced, and that's a huge amount of weight in those things. And with the F10 also, I mean, yeah, it went down, quote unquote, in engine size, but they also slapped on turbochargers and all the other things that went with that. So engine size, in weight, maybe didn't really even go down between those two. So you're just adding a whole bunch more stuff to it.
I think we need to point out one more thing. It was the first M5 offered with all-wheel drive. So the X-Drive system, that played a huge role. Probably at least 150 pounds, if not more, 200 pounds came probably from the X-Drive system.
Yep.
All right. So then moving on, right? So 560 horsepower in the M5 F10. Then, of course, the F90 came along, which I still love that car quite a bit. But then there was actually no weight increase. According to some numbers, actually the weight might have gone down by like 5 kilos or stayed flat, which is quite interesting. And actually, I mean, look up if the other guys came up with the same number. Yeah, quite similar. So essentially, yeah, it was really 5 kilos lighter than the F10, and then the power went up from 560 to 600 horsepower. So there is a reason why I truly enjoy driving the F90 M5, and especially the F90 M5 CS, which is a fantastic car.
Yeah, that car is awesome. Yeah, I mean, between those two models, it's basically the same 4.4 liter, right?
It is the same engine, yeah, just
yeah. So I mean, it's roughly
engine.
the same. Yeah, roughly the same size, an update to the engine. So yeah, that makes sense that there wasn't too much of a weight difference.
Okay, so that brings us to the new G90 M5. So clearly completely different than anything we've seen before due to the plug-in hybrid drivetrain. I mean, we've seen it from the XM, so we can expect this to be a heavy car. Of course, it took people by surprise, even though it was definitely expected. I expected this car to be heavy the moment that I saw it in some of those spy videos on the Nürburgring. You could see that body roll on the car. You could hear the tires doing the work. And this is where we are today, right? So 717 horsepower. But the question is, do you feel that weight? And I just had a conversation on this actually with Connor Di Filippi, a BMW Motorsport driver. And he was also mentioning, that unless you're probably a really good driver and you're taking the car like on the track, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the weight difference. And he's got a good point. I mean, I was able to tell the weight difference just because I pushed the car quite hard on the track. Probably still not as hard as, a pro driver would, so maybe, 5, 6 tenths maybe, but it was enough to really feel the weight, right? Especially coming from an M4 CS just a few laps before, and you could hear those tires doing the work, especially the front tires. So clearly it feels like a heavy car. But then on the straight lines, on the Salzburgring, I mean, I was up to about 290 kilometers per hour. And clearly the car was just pulling so hard. I mean, honestly, I was in a 6, 7 gear, and the car would just pull hard, and you had a lot more room to go. Basically, I just ran out of space I would have been able to take that car to a 300, kph. I think he had the M driver's package, so I think it does 300 or whatever, close to that. But essentially, the car doesn't feel heavy on a straight line, and that's something that I want to test in the near future. We'll have a chance to drive the car on the Autobahn in Germany on normal roads, and I'm curious to see what it feels like a normal driver. Clearly, I wish the car was a little bit lighter, just because that's just the MDNA. We always want lighter cars, and we're hoping for lighter cars all the time. But this is where we are today, and honestly, people shouldn't be surprised. Of course, we are a little bit disappointed because I feel like BMW could have probably skipped the plug-in hybrid in this car. And I was trying to get a straight answer from them, over the last few months, and no one's been committal to this. Nobody wants to commit to to an official answer. But I guess when they conceived the car, let's say 6, 7, 8 years ago, probably that's kind of the timeline. They were heavily invested into plug-in hybrids. They were thinking that EVs are the future. They were definitely not ready to jump on a full M5 EV, and I'm happy they didn't, because I feel like that car would have struggled to sell today. People would have not put up today with an M5 EV. I think that would have been absolutely the wrong choice. I guess the plug-in hybrid was the compromise. One, it would fulfill the emission regulations, for the entire fleet, and
which is a huge thing.
Which is a huge thing. And then secondly, it would give customers that want to drive on electric power alone an alternative. Essentially, I mean, even though 25 miles might not sound like a lot on the EPA rating, but I saw some comments from people saying, that's my commute every day, and that's fine with me because I can plug in at work, and I'm okay with that. So I guess the hybrid was more of a compromise, right? Let's look towards the future. Let's ease people into full M car, which is coming. Clearly, the new M3 ZA0, that's the code name. It's going to be all EV, but I guess they're just not ready. And probably the battery pack, it was absolutely not ready. Whatever they have today, the Gen 5, it's not ready for a high performance BMW. So in a way, we kind of dodged the bullet, because it could have been a lot worse. In many ways, I feel like, and I told them this, they could have just kept the same engine as in the M5 CS. I think that car makes around 620, 30, 50, somewhere around there. I don't even have the stats in front of me. But essentially, they could have probably bumped that engine to about 650 PS. I think that would have been fine for this car. I don't think the extra, 70 horsepower by getting the electric drivetrain would have made a huge difference, considering how much weight you would have saved by not having the battery pack, basically.
Yeah, but there's a few things there, though. So, and you bring up some good points. First off is, if you take a look at the BMW lineup as like a product manager would, and even from some of our reviews, like I think some of the best versions of each of their models are the plug-in hybrid version, right?
Yeah.
So that gives you the best of both worlds. Yes, 25 miles of range is not a lot, but the average person only drives 32 miles on a day basis. So, I mean, that's almost enough to cover a daily amount for most people. And then just that package of having that EV boost at the low end, right? Like you take that much horsepower with an all-wheel drive system and an EV boost at the bottom, that thing's just a rocket. I know both of us were in that XM, and that still surprised me how fast that car is. Like, that is a very big, heavy vehicle, and that thing moves. Mm-hmm. So, like, I know that drivetrain is impressive. Yes, that they probably could have cut some weight here and there, but as you pointed out, in a straight line, no one's really going to notice. They're going to notice that weight under heavy braking and a lot of curvy roads. But people who are in 5 Series and M5s, they're using that as more along as like a luxury sedan, right? And they don't get into those situations as much. So they're feeling that acceleration, that speed, and that's where all of this comes to use, right? To where we're not talking M5 people most commonly aren't heading out to the mountain roads for canyon carving, right? They want to impress their friends on a weekend, go out for a drive, and really, show off what it can do. But for the most part, it's their car they're driving around just because they want that M power and that feel in a luxury car.
Yeah, and honestly, from a marketing perspective, they also screwed up a little bit, because the car being about 1,000 pounds, or over 1,000 pounds heavier than the F90. It's that psychological number, 1,000, right? I feel like if the car was maybe 900 pounds, people would have
Yeah.
cared maybe slightly less. I mean, it's still 1,000 pounds, but it's always that 999 versus 1,000 that, just kills the marketing, basically. So they could have probably just shaved some weight somewhere to bring it down. But nonetheless, honestly, it is a heavy car. There is no way around this. We have to see how that's going to translate into sales. I am hoping that this is not going to damage the sales of the M5 Touring, because now you have a combination of, okay, the design of the car is still a little bit controversial. People are still not sold on the 5 Series and the M5 design, even though I feel like it's okay. It could have been a lot worse. Let's just put it that way. And then you add into this, the weight of the car, of course. And now on top of this, you're adding the fact that it's a Touring. It's not extremely popular in the US, even though the Audi RS6 Avant sells quite well. And now you have all these 3 hurdles that you need to overcome. So I'm just hoping that the M5 Touring will do well, because that's going to dictate if we do get any other Tourings in the US in the future, including a 5 Series. I'm still hoping they will do a high performance regular 5 Series Touring and bring it to the US, because I feel like it'll be a really, really good car. So that's kind of where we are with the M5, right? I mean, since we said that we're going to talk about the competitors, we can look at some of the things that Porsche has done. We haven't fully researched this topic, so just heads up, we're not exporting how they've done the whole integration, but we can talk about like high level. And clearly in the new 911, which is again not a competitor to the M5, they just point that out, completely different cars. But once again, Porsche is dealing with the same thing. They need to be more fuel efficient. They need to look into the future as well. They want different routes, so it's not a plug-in hybrid. It's essentially a small battery pack. I guess it's 1.9 kilowatt hour versus almost 15 kilowatt hour battery pack that the M5 has. And it has the Porsche has also a 400 volt, lithium ion battery pack. And essentially the idea of this one was to boost the power in the car, also help with the turbo lag in the 911. And that was kind of what I saw from the first reviews of the 911 GTS, that all the journalists were raving about the fact that there is initially no turbo lag anymore. The car just delivers so much more power, and it makes it extremely fun to drive. I guess the weight increase was also minimal. I think their target was about 3,500 pounds, so clearly a lot lighter than the M5. Of course, smaller car.
Not same category.
Not same category. So let's point that out. But it's really the battery pack that makes things quite heavy. And that's kind of the approach. I do wonder if BMW, seeing the 911, thought maybe we could have done this. I was trying to probe some of the engineers in a couple different occasions and what they think about that. And after the record, they all said that they think it's a great system, but then none of them said we should have done this. So I don't know if that was even a conversation inside Munich or not.
Yeah, and it brings up a couple of thoughts on my brain too. Is like, a lot of times these PHEV systems are they're designed off of a ICE platform, and then they just kind of figure out where to put the battery, right? Where when you take because you pointed out the batteries are heavy, that's where all that extra weight comes in. But when you take a full EV car, they design around that battery being low and in the middle, where I believe the M5 is probably still underneath the trunk, right?
I think it's in this one, I'm trying. Yeah, this is under the trunk because it takes a little bit of the trunk space and it sits a little bit higher. Correct.
So, I mean, once again, not that ideal, where if it was a full EV, it would have had, been on lower or something like that. With Porsche having that little bit smaller one, they could use that more of like a placement, to help maybe balance out that car just a little bit more. That's something that when you go the PHEV route, you're making a lot of sacrifices for things like that. And it would have been nice to maybe have seen something like, okay, they were going to go down that route. How can they make it a little bit better? How can they use it to their advantage that way, right? By making it low and more towards the middle or something.
Yeah. And I guess they have a chance to show us, their hand a little bit more with the future M5 CS. Of course, they haven't committed to that yet, but we know it's coming. I mean, there is no doubt they're going to make one. And again, they can bump that power. I mean, we've seen it in the XM 750. They can even go higher probably because of the electric motor, so they can easily go over 750. And that's going to offset the weight even more. They can probably shed a little bit of weight with maybe carbon bucket seats and rear bench being carbon as well. So they can definitely do that. Maybe some carbon fiber, bonnet and so on and so forth. They're not going to shave a lot, but maybe that's going to make a difference. Of course, the M5 CS won't be a mainstream car, and it will be quite expensive if it comes out. But I guess that's one way for them to make it up to all of us. They've been complaining about the weight and weight. I mean, I can't wait to drive the car honestly in about a month, because I really, really, really want to see normal driving what the car can do, because I still think BMW made a mistake putting the car on the track initially. It's fun for us to go there and push the car around. Being on the track along with the M4 CS, it's not always great, because you come out of that car loving that car. It's fantastic. And then you get into a heavier car, you need to adjust everything about the car. But then again, there were plenty of other journalists. I was probably a little bit more critical than others, but there were plenty of other journalists and YouTubers that raved about the M5. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was powerful. And that shows right there that we all have different expectations, maybe from the car, from the brand. Maybe we've driven more cars from the brand than others, and that way we kind of compare a little bit better. But I was also coming with this mindset that the F90 M5 CS, it's one of the best M cars ever made. I'm okay saying that, honestly. I just saw one. I mean, we had one actually in Monterey. I didn't have a chance to drive it, but I've driven that car quite a few times before, and I was tempted to get it for a spin one more time, but then just ran out of time. It's such a fantastic car from a design perspective, from everything else. So the benchmark was quite high, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so with Porsche's system, what was the power difference between the non-hybrid and the hybrid?
Okay, so let me look this up. So essentially the 2024 911 GTS made 473, and I think the US version of the GTS, the new one, is rated at 532, 526, 532. So, about 50 horsepower went up. But I guess what I read in the reviews was really not the extra power that made a difference. It was really the elimination of turbo lag. Really, that's what made the biggest difference in the driving experience. And I've seen some videos that go into a lot of details when it comes to the engineering of that hybrid system, and it's quite unique and quite interesting, for sure. All right, so enough about the weight of the M5. We'll find out. I'm curious to see what regular customers think about that, because they buy the car, they will experience the car in normal driving, and that way we can get a better feel of what the market thinks about the M5. Let's see how it goes. But with that being said, let's talk about the M5 Touring, right? Probably one of my favorite cars today, because I've been a fan of Tourings, even though I've never really owned one, because there was not a chance to buy one aside from the 3 Series Touring. There was in the US a while back. But having the first M5 Touring coming to America, it's quite unique. They had the unveil in Pebble Beach during Monterey Car Week, which is something I've been telling them that they have to do for at least a couple of years. I mean, they were also avoiding the subject when we have conversations, because they didn't want to confirm the car. But I would say, hey, by the way, if there is an M5 Touring, there is no better place than to unveil the car than Monterey Car Week. Firstly, because it's probably the biggest car event in the world by far, considering what I've seen right now. It's bigger than ever before. The amount of cars and people there, it's unbelievable. There's so many different venues where you can parade the car and showcase the car for actual people and customers to see it, not just on the internet. So that made for interesting debut, which was at the lodge on Thursday. They unveiled the car. Everybody wanted to see that car. Even though we've seen the photos, the official photo, it was the first time we saw it in real life. And I love it. Honestly, if I were to get the car, if I were to get a choice between an M5 sedan and the M5 Touring, I would absolutely get a Touring.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, coming off talking about weight, like it's already big and heavy, like might as well take the Touring. I think I've always leaned towards wagons as well. I hope it does well, because obviously the fan base and all the enthusiasts are like, oh, it's great. We finally got a wagon. But enthusiasts are notorious at wanting things, but not actually buying them, right? So, exactly. So we'll see if
Exactly.
that actually sells.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I ended one of my videos. I said, hey, this is the chance. If you don't buy this car, we're never gonna get one. I mean, this is the one shot for sure that we're getting. And if you're not buying this one, you're probably not gonna buy an EV Touring either. So that's just gonna ruin all the chance of getting very cool Tourings here, including a future M3 Touring Ice. Which is something that I think they should do for sure. So that's the true test. And I just had a conversation with someone from BMW, saying, hey, I feel like, it's a perfect family car. It just depends what you need. If you don't need a lot of, SUV space, let's just put it that way, you're getting, I think, 17.7 cubic feet with the seats up, and then it expands to 57.6. So I don't know, almost 4 times more space, and that means a lot. I mean,
That's a lot of
we'll
space.
we'll do a cargo. I think in liters like 15, 16, 100 liters, which is crazy. I mean, it's definitely as spacious as many large SUVs, and I feel like it has everything you need when it comes to that. Interior space, I checked it out. Plenty of space. If you have 2 kids and you're running with 2 car seats in the back, it should be okay. Of course, they're not going to get the legroom that you're getting in an SUV, but it's more than enough, and it will be the perfect family car. I'm actually looking forward on taking one maybe for a little longer than a week and see how it does. With a family. Is it easy to drive? Is it convenient? Is it a replacement to maybe, let's say, an X3, X5, right? I mean, the X7, I can't say it's a replacement to the X7 because that's a different market, different customer base, and they're always going to favor the X7, which is a fantastic car. But I feel like if you're targeting an X3, for example, or even an X5, this will be comparable in many, many ways, aside from the, driving position and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. Look, as much as I love like the X3 and X5M, I don't like how tall they are. Like I don't like being up high like that. I personally, I come from, more of the M3 worlds. I like to be that lower, more connected to that ground feeling. And that's what wagons provide you, right? You get all that space, but you still get that feel of a normal M5. Just it hopefully sells because I'd love to see more. You pointed out earlier that the Audi RS6 has been doing great. So hopefully it does continue to sell off because, yeah, I think if this does well and they could potentially bring an M3 wagon as well, we could finally have our cake and eat it too, right?
Exactly.
It's just great.
And it's such a one-off in the lineup as well, right? Because if you're looking for something cool, let's say on the M side, I feel like if you drive the M5 Touring, people will notice you. I mean, especially in markets where you see a lot of SUVs like Chicago BMW SUVs, this will absolutely stand out versus an M5 sedan. It's an M5 sedan. It's always going to be the business professional looking type of car. Or the M5 Touring, I feel like it's more like the mischief. It's for people that know. So if you know, basically, just put it
Yeah,
that way.
I'm waiting for the first one with a roof rack and like a top box on there, like
I mean, we'll
someone
definitely
to
do
rig
that,
one up.
honestly. Yeah, I mean, we'll definitely
Yeah.
do that because it doesn't have the carbon fiber roof, basically. So you can mount a bunch of things on top of that for sure. And honestly, I'm curious to see what you're going to do in Seattle with the car, taking it for a road trip and see how much you can fit, because I really want to see how much we can
I'll do
fit in
it.
that car. I think we'll do a proper cargo test at some point where you can see how many things you can fit in the trunk of the car with the seats up or down, and then also the box.
See it's a huge point. So with the wagon or a car with a roof rack,
Mm-hmm.
you got so much more ability to put things on. Like trying to put with an SUV, you got to put everything in it, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
you have an hitch mount rack. But like
Yeah.
for family situations, like it's actually harder to put more onto an SUV
Mm-hmm.
sometimes than it is a wagon. Like I said, you got a roof rack, you can throw all the bikes up on top,
Mm-hmm.
or have a top roof box plus the hitch mount for the bike and all the stuff. I mean, you could load a wagon down big time.
It's going to be an interesting project. I think you should probably put that box on top, fill up the car, put a bike rack as well. Maybe do those suction cups on the back window, and we're going to talk about the back window in a second, and then kind of see how practical that car really is while hauling, 717 horsepower.
I
It's
love it. You're going to see it at Cars and Coffee with people decked out like that.
oh
It's
yeah.
going to be lowered to the floor with the roof rack. Yeah, it's going to be a popular setup.
You have to. I mean, when I go to Europe, and that happens once a month, lately, honestly, I see a lot of Tourings, and if you see them, especially like on the weekends, you can see how much stuff people actually put on their cars and in cars, and that's their SUV most of the time. Really, that's really their SUV. That's the most practical thing, and it's
Yep.
cool.
It's cool. Yeah, I remember. I distinctly remember my very first time on the autobahn. I had a little 1 Series diesel, and I had it just pegged, like just pegged. I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. And
Yeah,
I get flashed in the back by some old lady in a BMW 5 Series wagon. Like, get out of my way! And it's just
yeah,
like
exactly.
that. It's awesome. It's just such a
Yeah.
great all around car.
I don't know if I would do 300 kph on the autobahn though with a bike rack and a roof box and all of that. But I mean, I'm sure some people will do it probably. I mean, it's one of those things. But speaking of that, speaking of things that I don't like on the M5 Touring,
Yeah,
aside from
yeah.
the weight, it's really the split window in the back, the split tailgate. I don't. I mean, I get it. I mean, the official statement is, it was complicated to do because of design. It's more coupe-ish on the new touring wagon, whatever. Yeah, that's just, honestly, mostly PR talk and marketing. But it was
Yeah,
probably
spin it.
expensive to engineer. It was probably expensive to engineer. Not probably. It was expensive to engineer a new split tailgate, and I feel like that's a missed opportunity when it comes to marketing, because those split tailgates, those split windows, they're associated with BMW wagons so much that a lot of people felt disappointed when they saw the new 5 Series, and they're like, oh, wow, there is no split tailgate. And it's a convenience feature. It works quite well. I remember using that in Europe quite a bit. It's so nice to just open up that window and just throw things in there quickly, like grocery bags and
Yeah.
all that, without having to open the entire trunk basically and just wait for that big trunk to open and then close. Like, why? So if you were looking to market a car, I feel like they should have just kept that, and I saw the disappointment in some of the engineers that I talked to, that, that feature didn't make it through. But it's knowing how things work with cars, every little thing is being scrutinized, and how much will this, essentially add to that overall cost. And they also look at data, how many people actually use this, because apparently they can actually track, through the computer, through
Hmm.
ECU, how many people have actually used that feature or not. And they're saying that it wasn't that high. But then again, I don't have the data, so I can't really tell. But to me, that's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel it'd make it feel a lot more useful. I mean, if you're just doing like a grocery run and you just want to drop some things in the back, you're right. The full trunk lid, that just takes time. It's kind of annoying when you just pop the rear window.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Also from a
agree. Plus,
space. Yeah.
not only for the space, but just for like the uniqueness of what a wagon is, right? So like in an SUV, it's a little harder to do.
Mhm.
Um, more likely you're just going to open the tailgate anyway.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it just seems like you're right, a missed opportunity.
And I'll give you one example. In my garage, 100%, I'm 100% sure that I'm not going to be able to open up the trunk of the M5 Touring. I'm actually gonna test it, because that'll be the perfect test to show that in one use case. Because honestly, some of the garages are small; they're even smaller in Europe, and I just don't see that fitting. That big trunk, being able to open it in a lot of garages. So then that's my point right there, right?
Hmm. It's so long, there's not going to be enough space.
Exactly. So anyway, so that's what's one thing that really, really bothers me on the car. And another thing that bothers me, because now we're talking about things that bother me, and
Yeah, let's hear
I got a long list of things in my life, but let's stick to cars. One thing that bothers me on both these cars is really the piano black. So I've had this
it.
fixation with physical buttons for a while. I felt like every review that I've done, it was all about physical buttons, because I was so annoyed by that, and I still am like, why are there no physical buttons here? Because I see in
I'm with
other
you.
cars they're
Yeah.
great, and now that I'm past that, because I tend to get over things, after after a certain amount of time. It took me longer on
You're
the
getting
physical
older.
buttons, yeah, and it took me a couple of years to get over the physical buttons. But now I'm on this topic with piano black, and I made fun of that in the M5 video. Anywhere you touch that thing, it's just smudges everywhere. I've seen scratches on the side door seals also, from just like, barely using the car. And once again, I don't understand the fixation of a lot of brands, not just BMW. A lot of brands are fixated on this piano black, which apparently it's supposed to show to show the luxury aspect of the car, to be more luxurious. Like, to me, it's not, because it's just annoying. having
It's
that
just
scratches
plastic.
easily. Yeah, it's plastic, scratches easily, brings nothing to the table. I just wish we don't go with a flat color, matte, whatever that looks a little more subdued. It doesn't have to be shiny and something that just smudges free, fingerprints free. Give me something that I don't have. I just don't want to have a microfiber towel in my car to constantly clean the piano black on top of the screen that's in front of me. Right now, I just clean the screen and the piano black.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing with when it's all over. Like even if you have a microfiber in it, you see all the dust on there. It's just, yeah, I'm with you. I'm not a fan of piano black. Um, it's and you're right. It's in every single car. I get into my lady's Q7,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a 2017, so like it doesn't have the full piano black yet. It's just got one tiny little section, and I'm just like, this is so much easier to keep clean. Like I
Yeah,
get into any of our press cars for a couple of days, and I go to shoot the B-roll for the interior, and I got to like clean, clean, clean because it just looks terrible. It's
yeah.
just so fast.
I mean, they should have used the same plastic they use in the BMW iX. If you look at that car, you have this combination of like wood and this plastic that's a little bit more matte, and honestly, it looks fine to me. I mean, I don't need that shiny plastic basically all over the car. But then again, I feel like it's not just us complaining about this. I feel like some BMW engineers, project managers, product managers, they also see it and they get it. They listen to customers' feedback. Um, yeah, so that's just the other thing, because minor things for now, honestly. But yeah, something that I noticed when I filmed the cars, basically.
That's a bummer to hear. There's a lot of it in there. But I guess that's something that maybe the accessories line can take care of.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Maybe
there's a bunch. I mean, there's still going to be piano black in there, even if you change the trim or do a bunch of other changes. There's still going to be piano black, especially like on the outside, and the last you can't really change that. So hopefully, the next generation of cars they will use different materials. I'm curious to see what Neue Classic brings. That's all about sustainability and new materials. So I'm very, very, very curious to see. But yeah, that's kind of the M5 Touring, honestly. It's going to go on sale, I guess, towards the end of the year. We'll see probably the first cars a few weeks after, maybe late December, and then more early January. And definitely looking forward to seeing what customers do with colors, because I think they're offering on the M5 sedan, they're offering 150 different individual colors. So I'm wondering if they're the same palette for the Touring, which they should. And I've seen one in speed yellow, which is crazy, but
that's a lot of yellow. That'd be
definitely
awesome.
stands out. But I feel like this is the car where you want to play a little bit with colors. You don't want to go full black or white and all of that. I saw a white one with the M Performance and looks cool, but I'm like, if I were to spend 120 something thousand starting price on this car, might as well get a unique color that makes it stand out even more.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they go your watermelon mode with the green and red interior.
Exactly. That'll be a good one. I saw Kilami orange and green, which is not that far off. Looks interesting, but I guess green and orange goes a little bit better than green and red. But yeah, I would probably done green and black in that car. The other thing that some people complain about was the fact there is no carbon fiber roof. But honestly, I don't see the point in the M5 Touring. It was once again a cost thing, because they had the same issue on the M3 Touring. In order to do a carbon fiber roof, you have to change something on the production line. So essentially, you're not able to run both cars, sedan and Touring, on the same line. You have to be a change there in order to do that. So that would have been costly. So they decided not to do it. But I think that's fair, because I don't think a lot of people on the M5 Touring would have taken the carbon fiber roof. On the M3 Touring is different, because that car, it's more on the sporty side, and you want to keep
Yep.
the lower weight, center of gravity lower, all of that. So I feel like it would have been successful there, but not on the M5 Touring. So in a way, I'm okay with that.
I'm with you. I'm a huge fan of a good moonroof or sunroof. And that being more of a family car kind of setup, like I want to have the more light in the car during the day. So
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
same.
I'm with you. I'm fine with not having that option. I think the take numbers are going to be probably a lot lower on. I mean, for an M5 Touring anyways. So like giving an option that makes it a little bit more less family friendly, or maybe just a little darker in there. Yeah, I don't see it. Um, Because I mean, one thing is like about with like the XM with its roof, like it has a dark feeling inside as well, right? You know,
Yeah.
so like it's nice to have a good moonroof in wagon cars. It just can be dark in there.
And that's a good point because I complained about that in the XM also. I said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I get it. That whole 3D sculpted liner looks cool, but then it gets boring after a day with all the lights. It doesn't do anything for me. It just feels dark inside and
Yep.
claustrophobic a little bit. And I'm like, if you would have put a nice panoramic roof, you know, from front to the rear, I think it would have been really, really cool. I mean, you get so much light in. You know, I think it would have been just a more luxurious experience, in my opinion, versus the steel roof that we
Yeah,
have right now.
especially if they'd done something like in the 7 Series where it's, they got the lights and stuff in there, the sky roof, like Sky
Exactly,
Lounge,
Sky Lounge, yeah.
like that would have been really cool in that car. And I think this is the same thing in the 5 Series wagon. Like if it's just a solid roof, it's definitely going to be just too dark and cave like in there.
Yeah, I agree. So that's that. And then to end with this, a lot of people, they've been talking right now about the M3 Touring. So, they're thinking about doing another petition. And I'm like, there is really no point. It's funny now because I just had a conversation with, off the record with somebody at BMW and he said that funny enough, they actually look at those petitions and they take them seriously. I always thought that maybe, it's just one of those things that we have to do it, but nobody really cares. But apparently they look at them and they do care about the feedback when it comes to that. And he was quite genuine when he was off the record. There was no reason for him to lie to me or even try to conceal, their true intentions. But honestly, they said, yeah, they saw the M3 Touring petition. Clearly, it's too late for that car. He emphasized one more time that there is no way the car is going to come to the US. It's just so far down the line right now that, the homologation would be so expensive to bring the car over. And essentially, that's why they have the M5 Touring. They do acknowledge that they underestimated the popularity of the M3 Touring. And that's fair because it would have been a more popular car in compared to the M5 Touring here just because of the price point. The price point would have been the decisive factor between the two when it comes to sales. But they did comment officially on Andreas Mayer. He's the head of product for the US. He did comment that, if the M5 Touring does well, then, let's see what the next M3 Touring will do. But, that's just a very political statement. No one really knows because even the next generation M3 Touring ICE, it's not set in stone from what I know. So don't even know if it's going to be one. It's going to be a regular sedan ICE. And then the electric one, there will be probably an M3 Touring EV, which is the ZA1. I think that's a code name. But then again, very different cars. So if they bring that car to the US, it will be a completely different demographic for it, maybe buyer base as well. So I don't know how that's going to do. But hopefully this car will lead to an M3 Touring ICE, which, could come to the US if they engineer the car ahead of time.
Yeah, we'll see. Like they say.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's, honestly, the M3 Touring, I think we would have seen so many of the legends of the Autobahn. Every time I go there, you see so many unique cars, and I feel like that car, we would have seen it there for sure, especially, decked out, tuned up, different colors. I think people would have really had fun with that M3 Touring, 100%.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. So that was a quick topic today, right? So we'll just kind of focus on the M5 today, the way it just kind of put some things in perspective. Of course, some people might have known some of these details, but the next step will be in October. I'll drive the M5 Sedan and M5 Touring in Germany. There is an embargo, so likely the end of October, probably it's going to expire. So there are going to be a lot of video reviews and print reviews coming out. So we'll see what everybody else thinks about the car. I'm extremely curious as well. And then you and I will be heading to South Carolina in November. So we'll take another go of the car. So this time on US soil. So, let's drive the car normally there too, because there are not that many roads where you can really push the car hard anyway. So might as well just enjoy the ride and see, what you can do.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, so that's kind of it for today. We'll have another episode next month. We can talk about some new things that we've seen. We can talk next month about the new 1 Series, and then about the X3. I'll just trade the X3 very soon as well. So then we can talk about that car because that's definitely an interesting car for the US market. More power, new design, new features. So there is a lot to share on that. But as always, guys, if you have any topic suggestions for us, feel free to shoot us an email at podcast@bmwblog.com, or you can find us on all the social media channels and on the website. And thanks for listening. Thanks for watching as always. And thanks for your support. And we will see you in the next one.